I just want to take the opportunity to welcome Ankor and Alex, who have joined the forum as well. So I think we have everyone that we were expecting on the call today. So thank you once again for joining in. I think I was just parallelly looking at the poll results, and just to provide you a quick snapshot, I think among the 10 trends, there were three trends which there was some disagreement. The trend around mainframe and automation unlocking value is something that there was a little bit of a disagreement. The trend around 5G saw one or two disagreements, and the trend around process discovery and process intelligence unlocking value is the other one that saw a little bit of a disagreement, right? So other than that, I think the 7 other trends, 100% of the votes were between strongly agree. Just saying that, 7 other trends we got like, strongly agree and agree. So I'll pick up a couple of those where we had disagreements and go deeper on some of the ones where we had strong agreements. Let me just get started. I think Nischay opened up the trends by calling out the fact that RPA as a standalone technology is fading out, and it's high time that in 2021 enterprises realize that to maximize value they have to go beyond RPA and look at this Avengers sort of a footprint to derive value, right? To understand this trend better, can I invite Bobby, right? Bobby from UiPath, to talk to us about how the enterprise automation adoption landscape is changing, and is RPA standalone is dead, or do you see value in that being a phenomena for the next couple of years?
Thanks, Praveen and Nischay. This is it's great to be part of such an amazing group of people. It's good to see a bunch of people I know out here as well. And your report and research is definitely very thorough and deep, and so it's great to see. I think we've long held a view that like hyper intelligent automation, that it's a set of capabilities kind of end to end that are needed to deliver automation at scale. I think, the category of RPA, or what we call it, we talk about automation broadly at UiPath. I think, though, the pieces are really important, right? You need things like computer vision, in our opinion, like computer vision and UI automation and some technologies that have been critical to unlock the simplicity and the speed at which people have been able to get fast outcomes, right? And COVID has been a big part of proving the need for that kind of agility. And I think there's a lot of traditional low-code players and in other areas. I think you have to have the integrated end-to-end. And I think the computer vision and the UI automation and the technologies around that, including AI, are critical, because all of our customers that we see, they want outcomes that are immediate. We call it day one value. And so, regardless of what you call it, at the end of the day, this is automation, and it needs to drive speed and agility and do that fast. And I think it's now a boardroom priority. And so, we like to call ourselves now, the automation software company.
Got it. Thank you. Kaushik, if I can bring you in now, I think just to continue this thought, there's been a lot of debate, and Nischay talked about API integration versus RPA, low code, no code versus bots. In 2021, will enterprises get more clarity on what automation means to them, and the scope of this goes beyond just building bots? What's your take based on the enterprise conversations you've been having? Where do you see the market headed in 2021?
Yeah, so I think from a services point of view, for us, when we talk to our clients and most of the deployments, it's not just about RPA, it's about automation. Automation, whether you call it as intelligent automation, or is it called end-to-end automation or hyper automation, whatever terminology, whatever framing you want to state it, but it's the end-to-end and delivering business outcomes. That's what it comes down to. So it's about sequence of technologies that come together to make that end-to-end automation. That's how we look at it, and that's what the clients look at it. They look for outcomes and look for ROI. And so from our point of view, there are a few things. For us, first, understanding the business process, what we're trying to go after, what's the domain depth we need. We bring in that together, leveraging the best of the breed technologies available across the ecosystem, RPA plus many others. I think you talked about low code, no code orchestration fabric. You talked about intelligent document processing, because for us, when we work with our clients, we deal with a lot of unstructured, semi-structured content, hence leveraging that extraction from that semi-structured, unstructured content, whether it is called computer vision, Bobby, you talked about, or whether it's called AI, NLP, and machine learning algorithms over there. And we do that. And I'll give you one example. Let's just to put some light to it and bring that to life. We were working with one of the leading insurance providers. We deployed everything on the cloud. Is a deep learning model that understands the insurance industry documents. It was containerized. We had to leverage with their legacy systems. We used RPA as a mechanism to connect those systems, and we brought that extraction, RPA connectivity with orchestration, and built that at a 95% accuracy on day one.
Interesting.
I mean, that's like people who are working 1,000 people doing that job on an hourly, like now you streamlined it. Of course, you know the rest of the outcome and the positive.
Day one value. Yep.
And the value I can keep going on, but I think you got the gist of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I want to go to Chris and ask it in a kind of a flip way, right, Chris? I think given what Bobby and Kaushik talked about, looks like the outcomes are pretty obvious, right? It makes sense for people to go down the hyper intelligence automation route. My question to you is, why has this not happened prominently so far? What are the bottlenecks that enterprises are still struggling with to be able to realize the full potential of hyper intelligent automation?
So I think, and having come from a services background, Deloitte, and then being at Kofax for the last couple of years, I think I can give a balanced view on this, very much focused on value and outcomes, and then backing into the technology. I don't know if that was the case, 5-10 years ago. I think automation was still a departmental level initiative. It wasn't an enterprise strategic imperative. And so with it being a departmental, I think you did start to bring in more niche solutions and tools as opposed to enterprise platforms that could solve a range of complexity, low to high complexity problems across the business. And you could start to standardize. And so I think now what you've seen is there's been an elevation. I think Bobby started to touch on that. COVID has definitely been an accelerator, but it's really elevated digital transformation based on everybody now has to have, for that speed, agility, and resiliency, a digital business operating model. And so it's been elevated now, I think, from departmental level into the enterprise strategic imperatives. And so now you have boards and C-levels that are now charging the departments and the CIO working together to develop a level of consistency. And so what you laid out in terms of hyper-intelligent automation, I'm telling you, when we win deals, big, large deals, we win them based on not bringing just Kofax to the table and our capabilities, but bringing our ecosystem, which means that sometimes I say, because I know they have a UiPath investment, and so we work well with UiPath. Same thing with ML, pre-trained ML, which is, Kaushik, I think you were talking about some of the pre-trained ML around the mortgage industry. And so we have very pointed relationships, alliance and deeper technology alliances, and we bring that to bear. And basically we have to cover down what you're calling your hyper-intelligent automation suite of technologies in order for us to win these big deals, which means that we have to be very savvy in terms of how we play with others. So this whole thing where Kofax has RPA and UiPath has RPA, who cares? What does the customer want? And so that's where we come into this, is we don't elbow out any technologies. We don't have any competitors, and that's how we've positioned. And so we bring the value that the customer needs us to bring. We can cover down on most of the technologies, but we also deliver in a very modular approach. And I think that puts the customer front and center as opposed to just trying to sell a piece of software.
Harel, I think you are wanting to make a point.
Yeah, and I think that, you're definitely right, but I think there is more than that. There's more than that, at least from at the end, the total cost of ownership is super expensive for many enterprises. They are trying to, provide hyper automation, many type of different AI, low code, no code, and other technologies, but the TCO is still very expensive. prior to the automation investment or after that. So I would say that beside of that, I think that the RP or maybe the automation market need to be changed. There are many things that need to be changed within the automation market. When we speak about full cycle automation or end-to-end automation, or I think that first it should start with some more knowledge and capabilities, or trying to provide more insights in order to be able and later on scale up very fast within our customers. And I think that the combination between many different tools, it's a very good point. And yet, I think that from an RPA point of view, most of the RPA vendors, we need to evolve towards something that will provide more impact, more value, but with much less investment that need to be done in order to scale up organizations.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think if I go back to Nischay's commentary on a parallel to Moore's law, I think in the next couple of years, the cost of doing same things will dramatically reduce. And that's where a lot of R&D and investments are also happening. But I want to quickly bring Eric from Nintex, right? And you have been betting on this market in different facets, from SharePoint world to, low code, no code to now RPA and so on. When we talk to customers, Eric, and we recently had a chat with Eaton, which is one of the largest industrial companies, and they have clearly gone a multi-platform route, and they want to work with best-in-breed platforms across the 4 or 5 components of HIA that Nischay talked about. But they also want specific capabilities for all these platforms to come together in a seamless way, orchestrated really well, and deliver value, right? So in your view of the world, right, based on your discussions with enterprises, how difficult or easy is it for enterprises to adopt a multi-platform strategy? And what are the best practices that you've learned in those kind of scenarios, Eric?
Yeah, so I think what I would say is when I've been out and about in the field, and I guess on the phone in the last year, because I can't travel anymore, the majority of the large enterprises, they've made a ton of investments. And when they're honest about how many different providers they have and where they sit in the organization, I've seen a bunch of them and literally have 10 to 15 different providers that they've been using. They have multiple RPA solutions that are in different components of the building. They've got multiple, what you would call BPM or low code, no code solutions in the building. They've got specialist solutions that maybe they use for mobile apps. And so they literally will have 10 to 15 different technologies. I think the companies that we've seen have the best success, there's really 2 things they do when they're selecting what they've got. One is they have a bit more of a focus on process overall. And so whether they're using process mining, discovery, mapping, whatever set of technologies, they think holistically about process and they kind of abstract up a layer. The second is that they look at the complexity of the use case, what capabilities are required, who they want to do the work, and they will eventually narrow down a bit the platforms. What we see though is they still will end up with like 3 to 5. And the reason is that as much as we all are great and we represent fine companies, the truth of it is we are typically optimized for certain personas and types of use cases. And so, our perspective on the market and where it's going is that there will be, a smaller set of very large providers that have complete solutions, but even within that, they are still optimized for certain areas. And whether they're optimized more around a developer persona, an ops persona, or the average person, those are very different things. And so, I think it's one just to say, it's just a blessing to be in this market. There's so much bad process and unautomated work or poorly automated work. I think it's pretty cool that all of us can be doing so well. And I think we've got great years ahead.
Hey, so can I just,
yeah.
Eric, you made a really good point around sort of having a wide approach, but absolutely having your business moat be your depth. And knowing where your depth is and the relationships that you have with the other vendors that are in the space, because like you said, there's multiple vendors. And so a good example is how Microsoft, right? Microsoft, their primary push is Azure. That's their wide platform. Do they have a level of depth around a lot of different types of productivity and automation tools? Absolutely. But do they have great depth in, say, RPA? Do they have great depth in document processing? No, they don't, but they do have surface level depth there. And so what we're seeing unfold, I think, is exactly what you said, which is there's there's this alliance type partnership where it's no longer going deep anymore. It's being savvy enough to know when your customer wants to go deep on your platform and you can't provide it. So Microsoft has been very open and inviting to us around depth that they know that they don't have, because at the end of the day, they want to keep their customer happy, number one. Number two, they want to drive consumption off of the Azure platform. And so Microsoft is more than willing to bring any one of us in. I know we're feeling that love. I'm assuming you guys are feeling it as well. But that's the type of ecosystem that's really starting to line up right now that I think is badly overdue, because it truly puts the customer first as opposed to competing technologies.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that, Chris. I mean, the one that I see, and they're not on the phone today, but I feel like I run into in the field sometimes, I get super over positioned, and I'll get questions from CIOs on is ServiceNow. You know, when you try to position as we're the platform for everything, we do it all, we're the only platform you need. Just the reality of it is it's just not true. And I think that
unless Bill says it on CNBC, and he did
with a lot of conviction. He's a great speaker. Overall, but I think at the end of the day, you know, the CIOs I've spent time with that, you know, have well-run operations, you know, they've come to their own conclusion on where different providers are best. And the fact of the matter is that they need multiple of them and they need to be able to work together. And I think on the other end, Microsoft's a good example where they have a lot more variety of technology. I mean, you've got everything from the Power Platform to dev tools to things you can do on Azure. Microsoft, from a product perspective, will always want to tell the client, hey, we can do everything. The reality of it is, in some of those areas, they're not that strong. And so they will refer business to whether it's your firm or UiPath or my firm. You know, and I think that's just the truth of it. And while there will be, in my view, there will be consolidation and convergence in the market, I think there will still be differences. Like why we may get compared and compete occasionally on the margin with, like, Bobby, your firm. The reality of it is there's a set of areas where you guys are stronger and better and you should win. And then there's a set of areas where we think we are more appropriate. And I think that continues because there's just such a diversity of needs when it comes to automation.
Agreed.
So, Bobby, you've been building one of the biggest ecosystems around automation, right? What's your take? What are customers telling you in terms of their preferences of platforms and the approaches thereof?
Well, they want it to be easy and integrated, right? I think, but they also want best of breed in some cases too, right? So, you know, in our platform, we think about, you know, we're not a database company, so we include multiple database options. And so there are elements of that around OCR. We partner with a number of you on this call too. For example, that's not our IP, but it's a good part of the platform. They want it integrated, and they want flexibility, and they want it also to be future proof, right? So 2, 3, 4 years from now, when I add and change my algorithms or whatever, that the platform can support that. So a commitment to an open platform, I think, and to, you know, a very broad ecosystem is absolutely critical.
Got it. And Ankor, from an EXL perspective, I know you are in the business of you know, data and digital for your customers. You work with insurers, banks, healthcare providers, and so on. How real is this issue of, you know, the customers wanting to work with best of breed platforms across different use cases, but struggling to integrate everything together and ultimately actually getting the value? Is it happening? It's not happening? What are the trends you're spotting in the market?
So first of all, Praveen, thanks for the opportunity. And I just wanted to say right at the get-go, the background material came yesterday. If you had advised me to see the Marvel series, I might have been better equipped to understand the trends at an even deeper level, because I had my browser open trying to understand the characteristics of each character to understand your trends. But on a more serious note, I think it's interesting as I listen to all of you, because it's almost like seeing the same battlefield, but from different windows. And I think the window we see it from is our customers care about the technology. And I think some of the things Bobby said, that it is future-proof, it is flexible. But really, the biggest problem is sort of the data. And data becomes the DNA. And it's interesting, in the questions you had asked, you talked about process discoveries, and people, I think they had a mixed review on that. The reason we see process mining as important for the future is not because it allows you to see what the process is today. I think through process mining, what we're actually seeing is the data flow, And the data flow allows us to map the as the crow flies path for a process, rather than having to sort of take diversions. And the technology that exists today is so flexible that it allows you to execute on the as the crow flies path. So to us, process mining is important to really allow us to define the future state, not really to understand the current state. So to me, the big headline is I think we're all seeing the battlefield, but from different windows. That's fascinating to me.
All right. And Nischay, you have done a lot of work in process mining and task mining. What's your quick take on it?
Sure. When we talk to our enterprise customers, with respect to the whole use case discovery aspect, I think this is the one single burning issue today, right? Where I think the scalability part really gets challenged because of, identifying the next best use case from a automation perspective. I think what we see in the field is that the enterprise customers are really relying on a lot of manual techniques still, like crowdsourcing ideas, running workshops, running hackathons, right, from a process discovery standpoint. So what we want to understand, and maybe Pankaj, we can invite you on the stage now, is how real is this scientific techniques like process mining or task mining, right? I mean, do you still see enterprises sitting on the fence with respect to actual uptake, or do you see that there is an increased uptake of some of these techniques today?
Thanks for that, Nischay. We're seeing incredible growth in what we're doing, right? The idea of what are the best metrics to see if customers are successful is, do they rebuy, right? It's not kind of that first sale, but do they actually do they come back and can you expand kind of what you're doing with them? And so that idea of kind of net dollar retention in the ARR world, or the really that concept of you've got a customer, they sign up the first year, do they do the second, do they do the third? Now, we're not old enough, right, to have 3 years, but we've got 2 years. And so the idea that even through a pandemic, every one of our customers that we had rebought with us. So that's, I think, kind of one idea of, yes, they're seeing value, right? And then and it's a very, very tangible metric there. Then you look at, okay, once they start talking to each other, and seeing the benefits of this, where's the growth at? And so if you think about kind of sophisticated organizations that have very, kind of mature automation capabilities, oftentimes using your guys' technology, I'd say they're our best customers. I know that we have a lot of joint customers with you guys on the phone. So I think the idea that, are they seeing it? Is it real? Are they buying it? Are they using it for automation? We've got data to support that, right? 4 of the Fortune 10 are our customers, right? We've got over a dozen Fortune 500/Global 500 companies that are customers. They're kind of directly taking what we're doing and leveraging that in kind of their transformation initiatives. I think that the idea of expectation setting is extremely important. I do not have magic beans. I cannot make people go away, right? The idea of this is an augmentative technology, and it's going to accelerate. It's not going to be that binary switch of deploy, process discovery, and then automate. It's going to be able to really kind of accelerate and reduce a lot of the friction that's going on there. And I think, when we look at the question that you guys were asking, it's about understanding the process. I think anything that you can do to help understand processes better is going to be advantageous in every area of an organization, right? Not just the automation. If you're looking at transformation, it's how can I improve employee experience? How can I improve kind of every interaction that's going on? So I think the idea that we're looking at this as really a technology that we see as becoming a core component of just understanding how you work, right? We are what we do. We're not what we say, right? It's our DNA. And I think, the idea that the more we can learn how we do work, the more it's going to be able to help organizations to understand where can they leverage automation, where can they leverage APIs. It's not an if then else statement. It's all of these together, but which one is the right solution for that particular component.
Got it. And Harel, you have brought some Israeli innovation into process discovery, right? You have made a ton of investment there. What's your take on this segment?
I think that, from process discovery point of view, there are so many things. First, I think, Pankaj, I can second you, but I think that beside of that, the ability of process discovery to see the human activities, it's much more important than, just automation. So automation is, top priority, I would say, for most of the enterprises, mainly because of the TCO, the total cost of ownership, the super expensive one. But I think that it's much more than that. You spoke before, Praveen, about the orchestration approach. Companies will try to better understand, their process activities, human performance, application performance. Mining tool, they are an amazing tool in order to measure and improve performance within the applications, but that's not enough. The future of orchestration should involve human applications and robotics. And from my point of view, process discovery should also be able to understand other robotics, activities. So think of that the orchestration will be able to get some information from human, from application, from other robotics, and provide clear view for the enterprise in order to see more value, understand their impact, and improve the performance overall within the organization, cross application, cross human, and cross RPA vendors.
Got it. Thank you.
I think the other dimension to consider along with process discovery is around process intelligence, the what if scenarios, right? To understand the process breakages, bottlenecks, some of those scenarios. So, Eric, if we can invite you, and we know that you have a deep focus again on the whole process discovery side of things. How critical do you think is process intelligence in tandem with process discovery today? And how do you see this panning out in the actual customer scenarios?
I think it's huge. I mean, look, I was at another company before I came here, and I've been at Nintex for 7 years, and I was in the industry at a different place for a few years too. So north of 10 years around it. I would say so much of process and automation, we've just gone after automating existing process and then not really understood super well what happened afterwards. And so I think this whole move to better understand the process up front, look at it more holistically, as Pankaj and Harel had talked about, I think it starts there. And then you got this notion of what's happening when the process is actually running and how is that working, and that constantly relooking at it and consistently evolving it and getting into this virtuous cycle. That's we like to market it as optimization, but it's really the usage of the insights to then constantly evolve the process. And it shouldn't be a one-time effort. I think maybe Bobby or another gentleman on the call talked a little bit about how things are evolving and they need to be future-proofed. And part of that is we try to work pretty hard with customers these days to think about a culture of process excellence. And that's then supported by a set of different technologies. But it's really this notion of visibility to what you're doing, constantly relooking at it, constantly evolving it. And that encompasses a lot of different technology. But I think that's really where you get back to the value. I think, Harel, you talk about the TCO and the lack of good outcomes. I think that's the part that gets customers pretty disappointed, right? Is they've invested a lot and they've maybe not seen enough. So I'll turn it back. I got the buzzer.
No, I think it's a point I want to bring in Alex from Workfusion. Alex, I think as a company, you have decided to focus a lot more deeply on banking industry and a few use cases. Are you spotting trends differently than what Eric and Pankaj and Harel have talked about? How critical has been document processing and process mining, etc., in the context of the work you are seeing, which is very deep in a particular industry, right? So what are the trends you are spotting there, Alex?
Thanks, Praveen. Good to be here. I don't think it's gonna get super controversial. I agree with Eric in the sense that everybody ultimately optimizes for certain persona and for certain set of use cases. And if there is enough difference there, then certain degree of specialization will occur. We focus on regulated service industries where there are, not just auditors, but there is compliance organizations that come and ask these organizations to explain exactly how this process works and exactly how the decisions were made. So process intelligence in that sense becomes quite important. And it's very hard to achieve when a lot of different technology solutions are stitched together because of the low fidelity of information that flows through that type of system. So I would say, in use cases like the ones that we target, which may exist in other industries, I would expect that to be quite pronounced as well.
Got it. Perfect.
So Praveen, can I just throw something out to the team here? We're talking a lot about technologies, right? Because most of us are product and some service companies that deliver technology. But what I'm seeing in the market right now is that we live in this experience economy now, where it's all about experience. We've started to touch on outcomes, but it feels like we still have this natural gravitational pull in our high level conversations here to go right back to the technology. Are you guys going into deals and battling with your technology? Because we're starting to bury our technology, and what we're doing is we're now investing more in experience. We're investing more in luminaries for the industries that we have good footprints in, and those luminaries have relationships with the decision makers, so the boards and the C-level at these major logos in the industries that we're going after. And so we're investing more in relationship management, if you will. Obviously, we still have our R&D roadmap going on, but we have a sincere focus now. And this was not sort of here before I came, but it feels like our sales organization is now getting pumped up and their quota attainment is going up now based on their enablement isn't around product demos. Their enablement now are around luminaries that are opening the door for them. Are you guys sensing that shift?
I would say for a second, I would say that we see both trends. So from one, you're totally right. We see more and more, C-level involvement, much more strategic discussions, and then that's a trend in the market for sure. Definitely during and post-COVID, we'll see that more often. However, my belief, and at the end, technology matters. Not technology, but solution. Solution matters because at the last mile, or in most cases, any large organization, whenever they need to face a challenge or a need, they need a solution that will fit their needs. And today in the market, there are many challenges for everyone and many companies. And yet, I think that in order to be successful in these industries and for these enterprises, the product is matter.
But it feels like the product is table stakes at this moment in time. Like the technology is there, and if it's not, like you're going to be weeded out very, very early on. And so the differentiator then becomes, do they actually want to work with you? Not do they have to, because they have so many options now, just like we do in our personal lives. We don't have to deal with Verizon. I can quickly switch to AT&T. And it feels like our customers now don't have to deal with us. And so subscription, right, OpEx instead of CapEx has really allowed them to switch very quickly. And so focusing on the experience is sort of key to our winning strategy now, as opposed to focusing wholeheartedly on having the best technology possible. We need to have table stakes technology and have a level of depth, but then lean on our ecosystem smartly. And what that does is not only it sort of fills our product gaps, but it tells our prospects and our customers that we can bring, all of this to the fight, as opposed to just us, and then you have to patch us together using SIs.
Yeah,
So
I think you would have
two points from my side from a customer side. I mean, I worked in financial services for 13 years running automation as well prior to starting this consulting. You're right, Chris. My view is the number one initiative for experience is digitization of service. Ideally, the process manually shouldn't be touched at all. That's the first choice. And because of the messed up systems at the back end, you still have to touch the process. That's the truth, right? And how fast can you do? And how fast you can do, 2 points from my mind. One is the ensemble of technologies is pretty easy to say, but unless there is capability inside the organization, it's nightmare. You simply trust somebody, vendor, and then each vendor will say, I can do end to end, I'll bring you partnership. But there is a game for every vendor. That's the first point. Second point, we abstracted out by saying, hey, at the end of the day, it's not one is superior to the other. For any process, you have an input, you have a thinking part, and you have a doing part, and you have an output. And each one of those tasks will demand a specific technologies which is best in class, but you can't stitch together unless you have internal capability, no matter what. And that's Satya Nadella keeps saying, tech intensity is equal to tech adoption to the power of tech capability. And that's the lacking. And to your question, Praveen, that's the reason why the automation is taking a backseat. Internal capabilities are still missing in many firms.
So are those internal capabilities being bridged by companies like EXL and Genpact, Kaushik and Ankor? I think this is I know Ankor and Kaushik, this business imperative and going beyond technology is something that you have talked about often. What's your take on this?
Ankor, do you want to go first?
Kaushik, why don't you go first?
I'll do that. Okay, thank you. Hey, I've been in the services business only for 3.5 years. Last 20 plus years, always in a product companies building products. So I'll give you my perspective. Just put that as a context. I think it's Chris's statement of ecosystem innovation. I think that's probably where he was going, is spot on as opposed to siloed innovation. It is the end outcome. I mean, I'm going back to my original statement. Clients, when they were looking for faster, cheaper, better, if you may call it in a simplistic way, get the right experience, deploy the right automations, leverage the right technologies, do not go in, reinvent the wheel, bring the right expertise and knowledge that can make that end-to-end solution happen. That requires process knowledge to the business knowledge to the business-led architectures, experience-driven, leveraging the right platformization technologies that's industry best in class and bring them together seamlessly. That's what the clients are looking for time and again, every client, every conversation. In fact, the adoption has, I know there was a conversation about his RPA or the automation adoption going up and up. In my head, 2021 will be like a massive uptick on the end-to-end hyper automation. This is the year that will grow massively for both services as well as the software in the industry. That's my take.
Let me add to that. I liked Chris's example of you can switch from Verizon to T-Mobile or Sprint. But the interesting thing is you can't switch that easily from Apple to Android. And I think the difference is data, right? And Chris, to your point around the go-to-market, I think you're right. The technology is becoming somewhat interchangeable. But in the go-to-market, if you actually understand the client's data, that's a killer differentiator. If you understand the data, how it's used and their process. So that's one big piece we're seeing. And I think when you talk about luminaries in some way, it sort of links to that. If you have an inside understanding of the way the enterprise runs, the data runs, the process runs, that's an advantage. Praveen, your point in terms of talent, I think more and more clients are looking for a managed services wrapper. And that brings together a lot of the points that we've made today. Because the managed services is not just deliver the outcome, but it is also you take on the problem of stitching together the ecosystem of technologies and you deliver me a managed service, right? So I think that's the second thing. And the last point which we're seeing is organizations have become allergic to point interventions. So if you go and tell them that for this $2 million opportunity, I'm going to execute something unique, there's an allergy to it. On the other hand, if you can create an enterprise roadmap, that sort of gets more that. So it's really data managed services and kind of an enterprise roadmap, the way we're seeing as being differentiated.
Got it. And
can I take the opposite side of that real quick? Because it's one thing that I'm challenged with my company all the time. And we've said it in multiple different ways of technology doesn't matter. I actually agree. No one cares about my technology or computer vision or this. It matters to me. It matters that hopefully I can deliver better. Managed services, I don't think matter. And here's why. Because we make the software too hard, right? SaaS exists because we couldn't create software that people could install themselves. So we said, no, you're not smart enough. We'll do it all for you in the cloud. Customers just want stuff to work. And that's why one of the reasons I think this kind of citizen developer is so kind of interesting, right? And it's not there yet, but it should not take an expert to solve these problems. They should be able to do it themselves, and giving them the tools to actually solve the problem themselves is $1 trillion industry, not telling them, guys, you're actually never going to be smart enough to do this yourselves, so just let us do it. And I think the idea of kind of the experience economy of, look, iPhone and Android, they deliver the same phone call. One delivers a remarkably better experience and therefore gets 96% of the profits in the smartphone industry. I think we as kind of, purveyors of technology need to understand that for our customers. Sorry.
Yeah, I think just on that point, I want to bring Preetpal onto this conversation. We talked about citizens developer, we talked about business outcomes, and they've been working as Persistent. They've been working with companies like OutSystems, Appian, Ankor, and many others. Preetpal, what are your quick thoughts on this? You've been thick and thin of this.
Thank you, Praveen. So, I'll give you a customer insight on this. Okay, I've been working with some large enterprises setting up their center of excellence on automation.
Right.
So, enterprises are also evolving into this area. If you look at, say a year back, right? Each enterprise had the siloed center of excellences. They used to have a BPM center of excellence. They used to have an RPA center of excellence. They used to have an AI center of excellence, right? So they are evolving as well. They are going through a maturity curve where they are bringing all of that together and consolidating into an automation center of excellence. That's a very big key factor to understand where their psyche is coming from. So they want to move away from their tactical way of solving the problems in an enterprise, and they are moving into more strategic way of solving the problems where they can bring more productivity and more operational efficiency into the enterprise. So how this is basically, driving the vendor side of it, right? So when the customers are looking at all these technologies and platforms, what are they looking at from that perspective? They are looking at the platforms first, which are easy to leverage, easy to adopt, right? They are looking at platforms that can, not only just do what they are good at, they are also looking at platforms who are well integrated in the broader automation ecosystem, who can be integrated into AI/ML technologies, who can be integrated into, something like process discovery and process mining capabilities, right? The platforms not only have the technology features, but they also want the platforms to integrate with an industry solution, ecosystem as well. For example, fintech company solution, systems, health tech company solutions, systems, so that they know when they are going to onboard a technology, that technology will be flexible enough to solve, majority of their business problems. Now, how this is driving the vendor ecosystem, right? Look at, the platforms that are there, right? In BPM industry, we have Pega, we have, Appian, we have OutSystems, and, on RPA, we have UiPath, we have Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, and many of them, right? Now, each of these vendors, what are they doing now, right? Because they are seeing where enterprises are going and what enterprises are demanding, right, from a platform. So they are adding a process capabilities, process discovery and mining capabilities within the platform itself. They are bringing in AI/ML capabilities within the platform itself, right? They are going and basically consolidating and onboarding the RPA technology into the platform itself, right? For example, Appian just acquired, Judoka, right? So this is happening. This is happening because of a reason. This is happening because enterprises are driving that reason, right? Because they are becoming more and more mature into how they want to run the automation within their organization. And that's the key difference that we are seeing in the industry. And that's where they are going to take this whole concept of your hyper automation that, that where you're, showing all these technologies coming together and driving the automation. That's exactly where the enterprises are moving towards, and they are moving in the right direction right now. So they are more mature and more, equipped with how they want to solve their business problems within an enterprise today, right? Yeah. And I would just say that, from a vendor perspective, if you look at it, most of the vendors are doing the right thing. They are also doing technology partnerships. If you look at it, right, you see the low-code platforms doing a technology partnership with AI platforms. They are also doing partnership with some of the other fintech platforms, right? Integrating with Fiserv, integrating with on the other side EMR systems and all that stuff. So that cohesiveness of ecosystem is going to actually drive the automation innovation inside the enterprises. Now, one last point I will put it in is that enterprises are also looking into insight-driven automation and intelligent automation. It was not the scene before. How they have reached to this particular stage is because they have done an automation within their enterprises. They have the data available on that. Most of the enterprises who has done automation using platforms like Pega and Appian and few others, right, Metastorm and few others. Now they have the data on the process. They know where the process lags are. They know where the bottlenecks are and how they want to uncover those bottlenecks. Whether they want to bring RPA into the mix of overall process automation to fully automate their processes because they have the data insight on it, right? Yeah. And now they are bringing in AI and ML into the loop because they want to make sure that they make more intelligent-driven automation going forward. So that's the trend that I am seeing in these automation center of excellences within the enterprises today.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you so much, Preetpal. I know we are at the top of the hour. Do we have flexibility? Are people gonna stay around, or? I mean, we can extend for 10 more minutes. I wanted to cover one or two more points. So in case if you're around, we can continue. And if people have to drop off for other calls, I'll understand. But I quickly wanted to touch upon the AI point, which I think Preetpal also talked about. And I think over the years, everyone has talked about the role of AI and the combination with automation, which will truly unlock value, right? I want to understand, is 2021 going to be that year where AI will truly unleash its potential? Will AI really disrupt the way automation is being thought about, right? So maybe Ankur, because you are betting your entire company on AI in more ways than one, right? What's your take on the role of AI? Is it becoming real, and will it become more real in 2021?
Yeah. So I think to your point, 2021 is the year AI gets out of the lab and becomes part of an enterprise roadmap. So I think that's the first point. Its potential is probably 5 to 10 years. So this is the year it sort of has its coming out ceremony. I think how enterprises are using AI, and Pankaj, this might tie to actually the point you were making. When we talk about managed services, AI was previously, the reason it stayed in the lab was because it was a model. And if it's a model, it has a very niche sort of champion challenger type of life. When you put it in a managed services wrapper, now AI doesn't have to solve the entire problem tomorrow. You can evolve the AI. The difference between AI and some of the other technologies is it's good today, it's phenomenal after it learns. And that process of becoming good to phenomenal is an evolution, and you need an orchestrator to make that journey. And that's where managed services helps. So yes, I think AI, to us, data and AI is sort of the differentiator, and it's sort of going to achieve the promise of automation. It's going to be this generation of achieving the promise of automation.
Chris, any point of views from you? You are at an interesting juncture, right? You have a lot of legacy customers, some legacy technology, customers demanding AI, automation. So how are you balancing all of it? How are customers balancing all of it in your view?
So one of the first things that we did a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, when I joined was, so we invested in an AI team within our R&D, and that hadn't existed previously, to build on our document intelligence, which is our depth. But forget about all that. What I'm sensing right now is that there's this stat that 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. The problem that we're trying to solve for, that our customers are trying to solve for, is that they are collecting data a hell of a lot faster than they can analyze the data. And for them to move fast and make quicker decisions at higher levels of confidence, they have data that they're setting on that they know if they just had the ability to analyze it, they can make better decisions and win more in their industry. And so where we're seeing AI play is around, how do I address this data, the mound of data that I have that I know I can draw insights from, but how do I do it? And so that's where we see sort of AI really playing a role. And so there's that dynamic. And then I think from the supply side, in terms of AI vendors, what we're seeing is that we always talked about RPA being a bridge to AI. RPA basically up-leveled the skills globally, from financial management analysts to supply chain analysts. And so they're ready to take on the next level of automation. And so I think the supply side AI vendors have taken note, a blueprint from the RPA, and said, let's make it easier to use. Visual UI, so drag and drop, bury the complexity. And so I think you've got the supply side getting it right. I think you've got the demand side now with the skill set and the ability to be able to handle it. And so you see that convergence coming along with the data that's being everything from ERPs to CRMs to HCMs. I mean, throw out all the acronyms you want, but it's all data. And so I think it's just this perfect storm where I agree 100%. AI, very targeted. This is the year that it moves from being something that's being incubated to something that can actually start to scale.
Got it. And one of my last questions, and then we'll wrap it up. I think Bobby, if you're still around, I wanted to quickly get your point of view. I think we did about 50 odd enterprise conversations in the last 3 months, and we tried asking in terms of the macro objectives that they are prioritizing for next year, right? And the 3 things that came out were really acquiring digital talent at scale. So that was like the talent war around digital talent is something that everyone was focused on. The second theme was technology infused operations, so digitizing operations and creating value out of it. And third was a total business transformation, right? So letting go of legacy and reimagining business models, reimagining business lines, etc., is something that they prioritize. So digital talent, technology infused operations, and total business transformation, right? In your view of automation in 2021, where will automation create the biggest of impact and why? Bobby, it'll be great to get some of your comments, and then maybe Eric, you can also.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we actually, in the last 15 minutes, talked about a variety of different roles and personas. We talked a lot today about process analysts and their roles. We talked about data scientists here in this case, I think a bit with AI. And I think, in Chris, a bit, it is the technology a bit to solve a major problem, which is we have to be able to help these different personas connect and collaborate. And I think that's where the real automation at scale comes from, right? It's not just the process analyst, right? It's the process analyst to the contact center users, the customer service professionals, to the data scientists, and giving them all an ability to have their interaction with the data that was discussed earlier, right? And doing this in a very simple way. By doing this, we're actually expanding the use cases, we're addressing the long tail and the people who can actually make these things happen. And I think, people are really frustrated by how long digital transformation has taken prior to COVID particularly. They were thinking in 1 and 2 year increments. Now they're thinking, right, in days and weeks, maybe a few months, right? And I personally don't think it's about, hey, process analyst only, data scientists in an uncoordinated fashion. What has to happen is that the platform, whether integrated with multiple products or via a single provider, has to make and remove the friction where everybody can be a part of that. I mean, we have examples in Rogers Communications in Canada, right? For example, where their dispatch workers who drive to go visit and solve cable box problems now have added an additional visit just by applying AI and RPA. So they actually interact with robots through their handheld device as they go to the next visit. And the robots do a bunch of work to prepare for the next visit. And there's a lot of, so my point is that dispatch worker is working with robots and with automation, and their process analysts trying to improve that process, right? And their data scientists trying to apply new models to be predictive and maybe actually predict who's going to call tomorrow and have a problem, right? And I think that's where this all really opens up, right? And I think the point earlier about, if the data is the key. We have the data. Now can we make it easy for all these roles, all of these personas in their own capacity to collaborate and work together? That's where this thing goes fast and really accelerates. And I think that's what's happened in the last year or two. But can we really expand that, in a massive way over the next few years? And I think the answer is yes.
And adding to Bobby, Praveen, if you give me just 30 seconds.
Sure.
So adding to Bobby on this, when he was talking about persona-based automation, right? The enterprises are also looking at help from both vendor and SIs to bring these use cases to them. because they don't want to basically have somebody come in and find out what's wrong in their business. They want to also see that what kind of problems that either vendor or an SIs have already solved in the industry, so that they can bring those use cases to them and accelerate their automation journey. That's going to be a very key part of getting to the enterprises and helping them out, because they have the problem, but they also want to see that who has already solved that problem, and can that problem also exist within their organization that they can solve. So, if you look at, most of the platform vendors, they also have something called as either App Market, or Forge, where, all these different SIs and including the platform people, that they, developers, they go and, put in those use cases and solutions that people can, enterprises can download and look at it, how to solve those problems. So that's also going to be a key aspect of acceleration, where we bring the problem, solutions to the enterprises and help them solve it for themselves.
Got it. Eric, any concluding thoughts? Talent, tech and ops, as well as business transformation, where would you put your bet on?
Yeah, no, I think my bet goes back to a comment that Pankaj made earlier around we have to make it easier. And when you think about all the challenges around global talent, the easier that we make it, and that gets a little bit into what you talked about, Preetpal, in terms of the solutions, but the easier we make it to deliver value, then the better adoption will be. And I think the combination of the innovation, the combination of convergence, the combination of AI, we are going to see a pretty significant step forward in ease of use and time to value in 2021. And I think it's coming at a time also when we're going to see a surge in budgets. I think as COVID ends, you're going to have a lot of unlocking in these industries, and the fact we've made it easier, and the fact that we have a more complete set of capabilities, and we've made it easier, as Bobby talked about, to collaborate. I think it's going to be a huge year in terms of growth and adoption, which will be, I think, great. Rising tide lifts all boats.
Perfect, great. I know we are about 12 minutes over time, but it's been a real good conversation. So I really appreciate everyone staying on and giving perspectives. I think my collective insight is that 2021 is going to be a defining year. It'll be the year of build, I think, in terms of taking the industry to the next level. And like Eric, you mentioned, right, the budgets will expand, the capabilities will expand, data and AI will come to fruition, process mining will go to the next level, and a lot of other exciting things are likely going to happen. At least that's what my takeaway is from all of what you guys have said. Like Nischay mentioned earlier, we want to sustain this community, so we'll keep adding more and more CXOs. I think we just planned it in a 2-week cycle, so we couldn't get a few other folks that we wanted to invite and make it a little bit larger, but we will continue to add to this community. We'll maybe even set up a WhatsApp group or something like that, and we'll keep, bringing knowledge and insights and perspective. And even on this one, we'll try and draft a quick blog and, share that with you, and would hope to get more feedback and comments and insights as part of this community. But thank you once again so much. It was real great honor to host all of you and learn so many new things on where the market is headed. Thank you, everyone. And
thank you, everyone.
Thank you
all.
Thank you, Praveen.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you so much.
Good seeing you guys.